Good afternoon, beautiful people and sports junkies. I am your host, Kenneth Tiberius Clark, King Tiberius, coming to you guys straight out of sunny San Diego. And I want to welcome you guys to the Breakroom Breakdown Sports Podcast, where we create content for all sports fans, including the casuals, right? The people that don't really watch sports. This is for you guys especially. Now, the Super Bowl football season's over, right? We just saw this climactic, or in my case, anticlimactic finish, right? The Rams and Bengals faced off. I was actually rocking with Cincy on this one. I love their story. Loved how they kind of rose out of the ashes. They've been a dead franchise for years and having not won a playoff game in 31 years. Now, they advanced to the Super Bowl. So unfortunately, they weren't able to close it out. The Rams were able to put together one last drive and get ahead. And then superstar Aaron Donald was able to kind of put pressure on Joe Burrow in the closing minutes to close out the game, right? That's what superstar players are supposed to do. They're supposed to close out games. But in light of that game, it kind of made me realize that, of course, last time I talked to you guys about 5 attributes that an NFL champion possesses, right? We talked about teams having depth, right? Teams having a defined offensive identity, right? A defense that does something great. So I listed quite a few good things, but one thing that I forgot was the importance of building a strong cultural foundation. And that's not really just for football. I think that's for all sports. And I think we've gotten a good chance to see really good examples in the past 2 years. But if we look in history, I mean, okay, let's look at the Bulls. What were the Bulls before Michael Jordan got there? They were in the basement, the dumpster of the NBA. They were one of the worst teams. I think they hadn't made the playoffs in 3 years. Michael Jordan comes there, and I don't think they missed the playoffs at all. Maybe within the next 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years, right? He was that impactful. So Mike gets there and he changes the entire, they had a losing culture, and he flipped the switch and they instantly became winners, right? And over time they learned how to win and ultimately won a championship. I'm just getting into hockey, but I'm actually going to a Blackhawks game this upcoming Sunday. Yay, right? But I've heard plenty of hockey fans, plenty hockey aficionados tell me about the impact that Sidney Crosby had when he was drafted to the Penguins, right? I heard they weren't very good, and he comes there, and maybe they weren't instantly winners, but he made you saw the impact that he made on that team immediately, right? Now, when I talked about a more recent example, you look at, and it's funny because I think that they mirror each other. You look at the Phoenix Suns and you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, 2 very similar teams that, you had these young rising stars. Nobody had really planted their flag yet, but, they were able to put together strong chemistry and a strong culture and ride it ultimately to go into the championship game. Granted, both teams lost, but, you got to see these, how can I say it, these heartfelt moments, like for the Suns, you saw these heartfelt moments when Monty Williams is talking to DeAndre Ayton on the sideline and he's calming him down and he's helping him get back in his game. And if you look at the Bengals, you look at the bond that they had. Granted, they drafted Jamar Chase to play with Joe Burrow up in LSU, and you saw their brotherhood continue. But you saw how confident Joe Burrow was, when they were playing the Kansas City Chiefs. He says, hey, after we score, we're going for 2. Right. So you saw 2 teams, 2 very young teams that maybe were not established, but a strong culture was able to help them bypass maybe any weaknesses that they had or deficiencies that they had as a team. Right. Chemistry can overcome a lack of talent. And I think that you kind of saw that with the Cincinnati Bengals. Once again, Super Bowl run was very impressive. I really think they did everything. They probably about 99%. They did most of what they needed to do to win that game. Defensively, they weren't special, but they got the job done. They weren't special in the secondary, but they had guys that did their jobs. Chidobe Awuzie, Eli Apple. Then you got Jesse Bates, right, who kind of had a bounce back postseason after he had a pretty kind of average regular season, and Von Bell comes from New Orleans, and he's playing strong safety, and they're doing all kinds of things with him. Mike Hilton from Pittsburgh, right? And then offensively, they brought in Jamar Chase, like I just said, and then just a year ago, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd had already been there. But they did a really good job of building this culture, because what they did is not only do you draft a Joe Burrow, but you start bringing in these free agents, and you draft other guys that come from winning programs or winning franchises. And then, that's just the cherry on the top. You already had Joe Burrow, who is probably the most self-assured young quarterback. His intangibles is what makes him special. It really honestly has nothing to do with his arm strength or his arm talent. His intangibles is kind of what made him a special quarterback and what made him special for that franchise, because you start to see them embody the way he is. He's so confident in himself. So that's the big importance. But that's the big importance of having a strong culture. It'll really help you get you over the hump sooner rather than later. And then on the other end, you see teams that when they're talented, they can be talented. And if they don't have a strong culture, they'll still find a way to lose. One example, my Dallas Cowboys, love them to death, right? They had a lot of talent this year, but Jesus Christ, the chemistry. I mean, well, they had chemistry. Let me give them that. They had some chemistry, but they have this culture of when they get to these big moments, somebody falls short. Maybe it's the kicker. Maybe the coach makes a blunder. Maybe on the defensive side, somebody drops a pick or misses a sack. It's always something, right? But that is ingrained. That's the culture that they've established, right? Culture goes both ways. It's kind of like momentum. It's either going to go, it's going to go a positive or a negative way. Either way it goes, you got a culture. So, and if we look on the basketball side, I think the Clippers are the perfect example of that. You had Kawhi Leonard, you have Paul George, right? You had Patrick Beverly. I remember seeing when that team was assembled, right? Montrezl Harrell too. But when we saw when that team was assembled, it was just like, oh my gosh, like these guys are going to go to the finals. They're going to beat the Lakers, right? They'll beat them in a 7-game series. They got this. They probably have the best defensive backcourt in the NBA, but it just didn't transition because they didn't have one player on that team that they were able to build a culture from. Right. Kawhi Leonard is not a culture builder. He's not a culture building type of player. He came from the Spurs where he was just one cog in a machine. Right. With other all-stars, Tim Duncan. Right. So he came from that type of situation. Paul George, once again, California kid, SoCal kid, came from Palmdale. I got a lot of love for him in his game, but, he isn't a guy that you're going to build a franchise or build a culture through him. He's kind of more of a hired assassin. You pick him up and, he's going to come in and he's going to average, 22 points, whatever, 5 rebounds, right? He's going to play his game. He's going to play really good defense, good two-way player. But that's the importance of, once again, you got to have those type of players. So there's 2 ways you can build cultures. Sometimes it's just a few elements that you need, right? You may need a head coach. Honestly, the team may just need to have chemistry. Sometimes it's just putting the pieces together. And then sometimes you have these transcendent level type of players that can come in, as I mentioned earlier, a Sidney Crosby, a Michael Jordan, right? Or a LeBron James, if we want to, give him credit for some of that. Or, well, let me stop. He kind of came into a culture. But I was about to say Tom Brady, but he kind of came into a winning New England type of culture. But sometimes you get transcendent players that can change a franchise, by themselves. So, like I said, not to really beat the dead horse, you have to build a strong culture if you want to win. Right. You have to build a winning culture. I think I just mentioned the Patriots. I think that they're the perfect example of that. They may have had a down year 2 years ago with, with Cam Newton at quarterback. But the truth is you look at outside of that year, you look at what they did this year with Mac Jones. They just kind of picked back up where they left off. And that's because they have a strong cultural foundation where when people go there, it's really people just go there and fall in line. They already know what to expect because that's what they've built. Now, Tom Brady took that, and he brought that to Tampa Bay, who were perennial losers, right? They hadn't made the playoffs. Ooh, did they make the playoffs with Raheem Moore? I don't think they did, right? So that just kind of shows you, right? Like this is a team that hadn't made the playoffs in a good while. So winning matters. A strong culture matters. Either get the players or get a coach like a Jim Harbaugh, right? Jim Harbaugh goes to the 49ers. And Jim Harbaugh goes to the 49ers in 2010, 2011, changes the team. They're losers. He makes them winners. And he literally turns Alex Smith's career around. So that's the importance of having culture builders, whether they're a coach or whether they're players. And sometimes chemistry just comes together and teams figure it out. So that's it. I guess quick segue for the casual fans. It doesn't just because a player is elite doesn't mean he's a culture builder. I just mentioned Kawhi Leonard. I could probably go a long list of players in all kind of sports that were great, but it didn't necessarily yield wins. Aaron Rodgers may very well be one of them, right? They win games, but hell, they just can't get over the hump to win a championship. So that's it. Like I said, if you guys had fun, please subscribe. We're on all platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify. Right, and if you want to chit chat with me and the Rooted in Sports Clan, we're on Twitter Spaces now. Right, every Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Right, and then we also have the Rooted in Sports live podcast that just debuted. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. Right, you can check us out on multiple platforms as well. Rooted in Sports Twitter. But yeah, like I said, look for some good stuff coming along. You heard me mention hockey. I'm going to be doing a hockey interview in the upcoming episode. And obviously now that football's over, at least for the foreseeable future, we'll definitely be exploring some more sports and kind of get get a nice little change up, right? We're going to switch it up a little bit, right? Because I feel like now we're entering a time where some of the other sports, it's time for them to get their shine. So that's it, guys. Once again, share with your casual friends so they can join the community, right? So outside of that, have a good day. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.